Hello and welcome to IP Study video lectures. Today we are going to discuss chapter number 21 of grade 8 social science. The chapter name is Marginalization and Social Justice. Now what do we understand by social justice? It is the idea that everyone in a society should live with respect and dignity. Nobody should be discriminated against because of their caste, their religion, their gender, anything. So it is about enjoying equal status. But as we understand that in any society, it is far away from being an ideal society. In our country as well, we see that historically there have been many social groups who have faced discrimination. These social groups or these communities are known as marginalized sections of the society. Their lifestyles are different from the mainstream society. So, mainstream society has its own cultures, its own belief systems, its own way of living. But the marginalized sections of the society are often excluded from the mainstream thought. Now, this happens not only because of social factors, but also because of various political and economic factors. Because such groups have historically been marginalized from the society, their economic growth also suffers. Their political representation is also reduced. So it is a combination of all these factors, political, social, and economic, that are responsible for making them even more marginalized in the society. In our country, we see that caste system is one of the main reasons why people have been marginalized. It has affected the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward classes, and religious minorities as well. Women and children are also considered under marginalized groups as they require special attention and focus from the government. So we will study about these marginalized groups in detail. Now let us focus on our first marginalized group, that is the scheduled caste. Now if we look at the ancient Indian society, we see that it was divided into the Varna system. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras were divided on the basis of their occupation. But the Varna system was quite flexible in the beginning. Basically, if you got yourself education, you could become a Brahmin, right? But as time went by, this Varna system became more rigid and took form of the caste system. Now, caste system became very rigid, and we see that the Shudras were especially discriminated against. When India got independence, the people belonging to the Shudra community brought this issue to the forefront. They called themselves Dalit, which meant broken. Our constitution also recognized the historical sufferings of this section and gave it the name scheduled castes. So scheduled caste is now a legal and constitutional term that is given to the Shudras in our Indian society. Now, this is not an homogeneous groups. There are many castes and subcastes that come under this group. So, the question comes, as this group has been marginalized since a very long time, if we say it's about hundreds of years, what does our constitution and our government does to protect their rights? So let us study about them. Now let us discuss about the measures taken by the Indian constitution and the government for the betterment of scheduled castes. First of all, the constitution says that everyone is equal before the law. Article 14 gives it as a fundamental right that nobody is above the law or beneath the law. Then a very important thing is that the freedom to access any public place. Now because earlier we see that the people from the Shudra community were not allowed into temples and even walking on the roads sometimes. So it is important that we give them access to all the public places without any discrimination. Then abolishment of untouchability. Now this is a very important law. We see that earlier many people from the Shudra community were discriminated against to the extent that they were considered as untouchables, right? So they were not allowed to drink water from the same wells or travel on the same road when the Brahmins were traveling on that road. So this is considered as untouchability. Now we see it is a punishable offense. It's a crime to practice any such activity against the community. So this is a very important provision. The Indian Constitution also prohibits trafficking in human beings and forced labor. Again, very huge problems in traditional India that we see. Trafficking in human beings means trading in human beings, so buying and selling of human beings, and forced labor means when you are making someone work for you without paying that person and without the wishes of that person, right? The next point says opening of Hindu religious institutions or public character to all the people in the society. Now this is again very important because earlier we used to see that people from the Shudra community were not allowed an entry into the temples, right? So many leaders even started the temple entry movement where they protested against this decision by the upper caste in the society. So now it is considered as a discrimination if any temple disallows people from any kind of caste group in India to enter the temple. Then denying admission to educational institutions run by the government. Private institutions can have their own law, their own mechanisms, but if there is a government institution, a public institution, that institution is not allowed to deny admission on the basis of a person's caste. And lastly, the government is allowed to appoint a commission to investigate the conditions of socially and educationally backward classes. So if the government feels that the people of India are facing some kind of discrimination, they can appoint a commission to investigate into how big the problem is so that they can make the policies and programs accordingly. Then comes the economic interest. Now it is important that we don't only guarantee the social equality but also promote their economic interests. So if we see that when we talk about employment, when we talk about educational opportunities, these are the mechanisms by which we can really help the people coming from the scheduled caste community. So if we see that any public school, any public office is open for people belonging to all the caste groups. So there is no discrimination for admission into these groups. If you have the merit, you can get the admission. Then comes the political representation. We see that the seats are reserved in both the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha. So whether it is the National Assembly or the State Assembly, we see that there is reservation for people belonging to the scheduled caste community. Now, despite the constitutional provisions which talks about the abolishment of untouchability or which talks about equality before law, we still see that there are many cases of ill treatment against the people of scheduled caste community. Now, for this, there have been different acts that have been passed by the Parliament of India. Different laws have been put into force. One such law is Protection of Civil Rights Act of 1955. And another one is Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Act, that is the Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. So these acts are actually there to check, to see from time to time what kind of atrocities are committed against people belonging to the scheduled caste group and to try and punish the people who are committing these atrocities. Moving ahead, let's talk about the scheduled tribe community. Now, who are the scheduled tribes? Scheduled tribes, or traditionally known as Adivasis, this group of marginalized group includes all the people who have been very distant from the mainstream society. These mainly includes the tribal groups who do not live, who have not traditionally lived with the villagers but have lived a forest life. Because of their distance from the mainstream society, they have been economically backward. They have also not been able to get the political representation and not been aided by the advancements of the society, right? Because of the seclusion, they have not been a part of the development of our country. We see many tribal groups exist in different parts of India, whether it is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, and southern states like Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, even West Bengal, Northeast India. So there are many tribal groups living in different parts of our country. They have their own unique culture, their own unique languages, because they are not intermingled with the mainstream society. So their custom, their languages, their even script in which the language is written is also quite different. So it is very important that we make sure that the benefit of development, the benefit of modernization reaches everyone in the society. So it is important to take the measures for the upliftment of scheduled tribes in our country. Now, what has been done for their advantage? Let's talk about the social, economic and political aspects. Under the social aspects, there is a commission that is appointed to investigate the conditions of socially and educationally backward classes. As you understand, data is everything. If we have the data on what is their exact condition, on how many students are going to the school, what is their economic condition, only when we have the data that we can do something for their welfare. And for that from time to time we see that different commissions are appointed to collect this data and to present their report to the government of India. Secondly, the president has the power to decide which tribe can be considered as a scheduled tribe. Now, we see that there are many tribes in different parts of the country, but we need to assess their condition to decide which tribe needs special assistance from the government. So this power lies with the president to decide which tribe they want to put under scheduled tribes. Now, different tribal advisory councils and departments can be set up, and these are done again to get more information. And not just the central government, we see that they can also be started by the state governments to work for the welfare of tribes in their own states. Talking about the economic interests of scheduled tribe community, just like we see with the case of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes are also given relaxation in educational institutions and employment opportunities so that their economic interests can be taken care of. Talking about their political interests, now scheduled tribe communities are given the right to administer and control the scheduled areas, the areas where they live. How does this happen? We will study in the next section. Then number of constitutional provisions are given for them, just the way we see under for scheduled caste, there are many constitutional provisions that are given for their betterment. And lastly, reservation of seats for scheduled tribes in Lok Sabha and also the state assembly. So very similar to the case of scheduled castes. Now let's move to the Adivasi demand. So we discussed earlier that they are given the right to administer their own land. Under this particular act of 1989, we see that Adivasis were given the right of land ownership. So it stopped the non-tribal communities from buying the land that was reserved for the scheduled tribes. Also, if there has been any land that have been wrongly you can say taken over by a person from the non-tribal community, that land can be reclaimed. So they had the right to reclaim it. So what happened was, we see that traditionally scheduled tribes have always lived around the areas of forested areas. So many businessmen, many people from the non-tribal communities have got this land at a very lower price, because we see that tribal communities have been denied of formal education, of good education, so they were not able to decide on what amount they have to sell their land. So they sold their lands at very low prices, and now they have got the right to reclaim it if they feel so. Compensation. Now, if the land cannot be reclaimed, at least they should be compensated for their losses. So such provision is made under the 1989 Act. Now, this act also protected the Adivasi community from further exploitation. It made it illegal to take away their resources, to take away their land, and also force them into labor. So we see that this act was a very instrumental act in protecting the rights of the tribal community in our country. Now let's talk about the other backward classes. So apart from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe classes, we see that there are many communities in our country which have been disadvantaged as well in terms of their education and in terms of their economic opportunities as well. So these our government recognizes as other backward classes. Now this list of who constitutes as under the other backward classes is very dynamic. From time to time this list keeps on changing. In fact, the central government and state governments have their own list of whom they considered as an other backward class in their state. For the rights of people belonging to the other backward groups, we see that 27% reservation has been recommended in public employment as well as higher education. Now the backward classes division of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is looking after the welfare of OBCs in our country. Now they not only look after the interests of the community in the policy planning and the implementation, but they are also responsible for looking at the working of two other important bodies. These are the National Backward Classes Finance and Development Corporation and the National Commission for Backward Classes. So these groups are also taken care by this backward classes division in the ministry. Now let's move to the next topic, and that is minorities. Now minority, if we say in simple terms, it means the people who are in a small percentage, who are not the major part of the population but in fact the smaller part of the population. So in our country, if we see, this term minority is not exactly defined in our Indian constitution, but we see that many communities are considered under this term, and there are several constitutional measures which are to protect the interests of the community, of the minority community. If we look at Article 29 of the Indian Constitution, which is part of the fundamental rights as well, now this right gives any group living within the jurisdiction of India the right to preserve and promote its own language, script, literature and culture. So every community in India is allowed to promote their own culture. So that is one of the first measures that is taken for the minority group in our country, that their language, script and culture can be preserved and promoted by them. Secondly, the minorities also have the right to establish their own educational institutions, and the state shall not discriminate against them while giving them grants. Lastly, the president also has the autonomy to appoint a special officer for linguistic minorities. So it is a power given to the president that if the president feels that injustice is done against the minorities of India, the president can appoint a special officer for that purpose. Now let's move to the other marginalized groups. Now this includes women and children. Now talking about women in India, we see that their status in the society has improved a lot since independence, but we will talk about the historical perspective as well. See, if we look at the early Vedic period, the situation of women was very good in the society. But with the later Vedic period, as more and more wars were fought, we see that the status enjoyed by women was not as good. There were several social evils in our society. Some of them included the Sati Pratha, child marriage, dowry system, and if we look at particular states, then Johar was practiced in Rajasthan. In many parts of South India, we see Devdasi practice was there. So there were many social evils that our women were facing at that time. With the work of many social reformers, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwarchand Vidyasagar, Jyotiba Phule, the status of women improved in the society in the last 200 to 300 years. And when we got independent, since 1947, we have made sure that our women enjoy equal status in the society. Our constitution also talks about equality before law, and it has also given women the equal voting rights and whatever can be done for the empowerment of women, we have done that as a country, and we are committed to that goal as well. Talking about the other social disadvantaged group, that is the children. Now, United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child defines a child as anyone who is below the age of 18 years of age, right? So I guess anyone who is watching this video for educational purpose is a child. So yes, so children are very important for the future of our country, but the children in our country are facing their own issues. Two of the main issues that our children are facing, one is malnutrition, where we see that there's inadequacy in the quality and quantity of food that our children are eating. So about 1/3 of the population of children population in our country still faces with malnutrition, where they are not getting enough quality food. Apart from this, child labor is another problem. Many children, because of various circumstances, are forced to work. So that is another big problem in our country. Talking about the rights of children, now Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, again we keep on repeating this. It is very important. It ensures equality before law, and children enjoy almost same rights as any other citizen of our country. So any other adult of our country. Now Article 21A is very important because it makes right to education a fundamental right. So this was not the case since the beginning of the constitution, but later on this act was implemented and right to education became a fundamental right. Now Article 24 is very important, as we discussed before that child labor is a huge problem in our country. So this protects children from child labor. Now Article 39 Part F is also very important. It is part of the directive principles of state policy. Now this ensures that there is no exploitation done against children and youth of this country. Now let's discuss our next topic, that is social inequality and economic status. Now what is social inequality? It simply means that when a group of people are discriminated against from the mainstream society. So there could be many examples of this. It could be the way they are treated, the voting rights of people, freedom of speech, access to various healthcare facilities, educational facilities in our country, and other resources. So social inequality can include any or all of these. Now economic inequality is more about the unevenness in access to the resources of a country, right? So the resources are not evenly distributed among the members of the society. That is economic inequality. If we understand that in any society, if there is social inequality, it also leads to economic inequality. So in a way, we can say that both these concepts are interrelated. Now moving to the next topic, and that is about Muslims and marginalization. Now Muslims is the largest religious minority group in our country. Since independence, we have seen that their group, in terms of socio-economic growth, this group has lagged behind as compared to the mainstream society. Now in 2005, we see that a committee was set up under Justice Rajinder Sachar. This committee found out that the status of Muslims in our society was not as compared to the status of other minority groups. In terms of education especially, it found out that the Muslim children who were of the age of 7 to 16 years, their average schooling years were lesser than other socio-religious communities in our country. So they recognized the need of improving the status of Muslim population in our country. Now it is not as easy to understand why Muslims have faced such a situation in our country. There are many dimensions to it. If we understand that Muslim customs and practices are also quite distinct from the mainstream society, which has made it difficult for them to be a part of the mainstream society. So the Indian Constitution has always been committed to the idea of being a secular nation, and that is why it has provided different provisions for the upliftment of the Muslim community in our country. Right to freedom of religion is a fundamental right in our country, and it has made sure that we are committed on making the Muslim community a part of the mainstream India. Now let's move to the last topic of this chapter, this case study on manual scavenging. Now what is manual scavenging? Manual scavenging has a lot of health hazards associated with it. Eye, skin, other respiratory problems are common among the people who are engaged in this activity. Talking about the economic condition of people are paid less than 200 rupees at times, so that is a very low daily wage for any person engaged in such an activity. Now this has also led to untouchability in our country, as people engaged in manual scavenging have often faced untouchability practice against them. Our government has made sure that it has brought in many laws to ensure that manual scavenging is not practiced in our country. In 1993, we see that employment of manual scavengers and construction of dry latrine prohibition act was passed, but years later we found that the number of people who were involved in manual scavenging have actually increased instead of being reduced. So a PIL was also passed in the year 2003, which talked about this problem, and since then in 2013 we see that a new act was formed. Prohibition of employment as manual scavenger and the Rehabilitation Act was also passed to make sure that people are not subjected to such difficult work and such inhumane work. So as we conclude this chapter, we understand that there is still a lot of inequality that exists in our country, and there are many groups which are historically disadvantaged. But we also understand that our government and our constitutional provisions are helping to make sure that we become more equal as a society, and every citizen of our country lives with respect and dignity. So I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and we will meet again in the next video lecture. Thank you so much.